And here we are, Tom. Live, man.
Hey, Scott.
Dude,
I
how long
forgot
has
what
it
you look
been?
like.
6 months? 7 months?
6
8
months,
months? At
7 months,
least?
because we did all those last episodes of Necrocasticon like in October, November.
Yeah, it was the end of last year that we took the break, if you will. It's being an extended break. But in that time frame,
Yeah,
I was like, I have this platform. I miss talking to you guys. Why not have you guys on here one at a time if possible and have a discussion there? He was just checking something, YouTube. It's okay. No problems here. No problems. But I had Walt on here, our good friend Walt Ball, and we talked about his favorite Kiss albums. And today we got you on here talking about folk horror. And
I saw his list of Kiss albums, and I don't know.
controversial to say the least.
To say that I love Wally is an understatement.
Well, of course, we all do.
Without Wally, some of my top 10 bands that I love nowadays, I would not be listening to
True that.
if not for him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come straight out and tell you, he introduced me to Lucifer, Haunt.
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of those bands
right
you're
there,
into.
right off the bat.
Hey, Bobby, I
Two of
see
the
you in the
bands that I
chat, man.
love
How you
right
doing?
now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, there's people in the chat?
Yeah, Bobby Caralfa's in here. Our buddy in Indianapolis who's a spice monger. This guy loves the hot shit. Hope you're feeling better, Bob. Hope everything's going good with you. We'll see who else
Oh,
gets
he's one
to
of those
stop in.
guys.
Yeah, he's one of those badasses.
Yeah.
Bobby has his own
So he wasn't like
YouTube
me.
channel too, and he does the spicy shit on there.
He wasn't like me who got punished by his mother for swearing with hot sauce.
No,
loves
he
it
would
because
constantly be going fuck, 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 just get more shots of that stuff. That's the way Bobby
Yeah,
rolls.
because of my mom, I don't like hot spicy
I am
stuff.
a total pussy. I don't mind admitting it about spicy stuff. I can't do it. So, Hattie Bojangles, Tracy, how you doing, girl? Good to see you. Welcome. Our friend from England is here. Sadly, still the same.
England?
Yes. Oh yeah,
We
man.
be talking here.
This is
England
international.
person.
This is international.
England person, because we're going to be mentioning a band from London during our discussion today.
Yes.
Definitely. And if you can guess what band that is before we get to it, I'll make sure one of my UK friends gives you something free.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. For anybody out there who doesn't know, this is Thomas R. Clark. I know Miss Tommy.
Hi.
And we first met 2015 through the professional wrestling business. He was a journalist and super fan out in the west side of New York. I was on the east side of New York in Vermont wrestling and doing stuff like that. Through Walt Ball, our good buddy, we hooked up. We started doing podcasting together in 2015 called the Necrocasticon. Talked horror, metal, and more. And
Yes.
and now it's a chance for me to bring him on here one-on-one. We can have a cool discussion here. We haven't gotten to chat in a while. And if there's anybody I know that is a freaking horror guru, it's this guy right here. I've learned a lot from him. I know a lot of people learn a lot from him. And we're talking folk horror. So when we say the words folk horror, where does that come from? What starts that?
Okay, well, this is hopefully I'll be able to educate people today. Yes, and yeah, me looking like a druid nowadays is kind of by design.
You're not wearing the hat.
I don't have my wizard hats downstairs.
He has a wizard hat. It's awesome.
But I've kind of grown into this role. A long time ago, Armand Rosamilia wrote a review of my first collection of stories, and in it he says he couldn't wait to see which direction I go to and where you thought what subgenre I fall into as a specialty. And it just happened to be, it was very organic that I fell into the folk horror genre. And it started when my writing teacher, Garrett, started saying to me things about how my horror comes from fantasy and mythology. And I'm like, wow, you're right, it does. You're right, it does. And that leads to what folk horror is. It is... It's horror that it's kind of like cosmic horror, but it's more earthly. Is the best way.
It's more grounded.
I can put it. It's more grounded.
Yeah,
literally. It contains many of the same elements that are found in cosmic horror. The fear of the other, but the other in this in folk horror is not just the antagonist; it is also the protagonist. Because you have themes of superstition, folk religion, paganism, there's sacrifices, There's all those dark aspects of nature. You're going to have a secret society or cult, so they're another. As far as your protagonist may be concerned, who may be a person who comes from the city and goes to the country. And that's what a lot of these stories are. It's somebody going from the city to the country or the country to the city.
Mm.
And it's the conflict between the wild and civilization, or chaos and law.
Would you say that
really
would you say for folk horror, like probably the most prevalent of that is the prototypical ghost story that is passed around through
no,
generations?
no, 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 no. The prototypical folk horror stories, we grew up with two of them. Okay, well, number one, your fucking boogeyman, the boogeyman in the closet, which I saw the movie yesterday. No, I like the inspiration that it took from Stephen King's short story, which is one of probably my top 5 favorite Stephen King stories of all time. Um, the acting was good. It was well made. There was pacing issues with it though.
Mm.
And my screening of it had a lot of chaos in there. There was people that were arguing over assigned seating and stuff. Yeah, it was
Karen, Chad, sit down and shut up and watch the movie.
first world problems, you know. But yeah, so the boogeyman is one of them, and the other is that abandoned house down the street. Everybody had that house on there in their neighborhood, where your parents said, "Don't go in that house," and all the kids made up stories about that house. And that in my neighborhood, it was the Coon House. We called it the Coon House. Now, was it called the Coon House? For what reason was it called the Coon House? So from that comes all these different things that our imaginations create. Why is it the Coon House? Was it the Coon House because raccoons lived in it? Was it a Coon House because the surname of the people that lived there were Coon? Was it a Coon House because some horrible racist thing happened in that house in the past? Who knows? Well, the bottom line is, when my uncle went in there with his pistols one day and came back with a bag of dead raccoons, that's what it was called that. And the reason that my family and the neighbors told all the kids to stay away from the Coon House was
there was raccoons.
because there was freaking raccoons in it, and it was also an abandoned house that we could have gotten hurt in. So, folk horror and folk tales are designed to prevent you from doing something that's going to hurt yourself. You know, for the most part, they're a moral play, and that's why I found that blending my splatterpunk that I love to write with the folk horror to make this splatterfolk subgenre that I have fallen into, and now, according to some book reviewers, I am at the forefront of this movement. I'm going to include Aaron Neville in that movement. I'm going to include Ruth Ann Jaggi and Natasha Sinclair in that movement. They're writing their own brands of folk horror, but we all kind of intersect. So, hey, I'm happy. I'm finally happy as a writer. I feel I could have success with this. To be honest.
As someone who has had the opportunity to beta read for you in the past, I mean, that's definitely the path you've gone down. Going back to, one of my favorites that you wrote that is like straight up folk horror for me is Fireflies and Apple Pies.
Which is the first story in The God Provides.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I love that story. The God Provides was another, series that you wrote there. Again, that would take this...
Fireflies and Apple Pies is the first story in that collection.
And then goes back through the history and creates its own universe in and of itself.
It does.
And, so that's even more expanding of your creative process as a writer.
And another thing, too, because I focus on the Fae. And how they really are, and the Fae are dark.
Yes.
I don't want to be the guy that bursts your bubbles here, kids, but your perceptions of fairies are all based off of two things: William Shakespeare and Walt freaking Disney. Okay? And William Shakespeare, he created the idea of the fairies with the little wings and playing around the fairy garden, all this stuff. That's all William Shakespeare. True fairies, changelings, and the like, they're evil, dark beings that live under the mound. They were banished. When they come out, bad things happen. Yeah, they do. So there's a lot of darkness that I was able to incorporate into this, to use things that weren't normally used in modern horror. And it opened up a whole freaking door to me. I'm like, oh my god, I've been writing this all along. Even Bella's Boys, which I at first to myself thought was a cosmic horror story, it's truly not. It is the first of the splatter folk books because I blend Norse mythology with Native American mythology, with elder gods, with this cosmic being, and in the fear of the other. I really strongly emphasize the fear of the other in the beginning of that book, with the glamour. The glamour is a fae type illusion that is cast over our protagonist Corey in that book when he is perceiving the people in the bar in a negative manner. The reason he's doing that is because of the spell that is on him by Bella. She is influencing his thoughts and making him see everybody else as another, as the because of it brings out their weaknesses, their flaws, and he perceives that, and he's shunned by that. He doesn't want to be around them. It forces him to go to her. It's a hunting technique for Bella.
So with those two aspects that you just brought up about the basis of all folk horror being the boogeyman in the closet and that the unknown, the house at the end of the street. And in my neighborhood, it was Sheedy Mansion. It was not too far away from where I lived, and it was this house on top of a small little hill off a main drag. And we would all walk by that house, and it was, it was old and rickety and stuff like that. And like you hear the stories about, don't go up there, it's haunted there, and there's ghosts that occupy there. But I went to school with the kid who lived there, and he was fine. He was totally normal, So it's like there's a disconnect here. I'm not getting this. Where he's cool, but what? it's like as much as when your relative went in the house with a gun there and found the raccoons. Oh, okay. He spoiled it, Santa Claus ain't real. It's ruined the the whole surprise of the whole thing. Just made the whole thing.
Well, in this case, it's almost a Krampus,
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. So with those two aspects there, we take those two stories, and then all these different branches start feeding off that tree that folk horror is, with those two big trunks there, and all these branches and leaves are flying off everywhere, to where we get into all different kinds of genres and so forth. Folk horror movies.
Folk horror movies. Their core, I guess. There's a trio of films that came out in the late '60s, early '70s, that really encapsulate and are considered the holy trinity of folk horror. And when I describe these movies to you, with one of them, you're going to go, "Oh, that sounds like a song I know." We'll talk about that later too. But you've got Witchfinder General, which is a factual. It's not factual. Telling of this the guy that wrote the bunch of stuff during the Ringo Civil War, killing people. I forget his name, but Vincent Price plays him.
Yes, Vincent Price.
And yes, and the other two are The Wicker Man and The Blood on Satan's Claw. And The Blood on Satan's Claw, the whole movie is pretty much Number of the Beast from Iron Maiden. And speaking of which, Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, that song in and of itself is the perfect folk horror metal song. It encapsulates everything that there is about folk horror, especially British and English folk horror.
Yeah.
And there's an American cover of it by a gentleman named Sean James. I'm going to see him in October down in Philly, provided I can get over the I-95 bridge that collapsed this morning. And yeah, scary stuff. But his acoustic, his almost bluegrass blues version of Number of the Beast is fantastic. That's a song I suggest you do on your Mr. Scott Reacts.
Yeah, I can definitely check that out.
Because you'll be blown away. And it pulls in that feeling of Appalachia into it. So like you're lost in the woods. And there's the devil.
Yep.
But The Blood on Satan's Claw is basically about a bunch of kids who find what could be Satan. Maybe it's a pagan deity. Who knows? But that, and then The Wicker Man. Now, come on. Well,
Christopher
what else
Lee.
could be said about The Wicker Man?
Hmm.
That movie has been so influential. Even Iron Maiden wrote a song about the movie, but that is more about the progress of England and how they've gone from being pagan to a society. That song is more about that than being a folk horror song. But wow, I can't believe I know all this shit.
This is what I would hear all the time on Necro. Like, no, wow, okay, yeah, yeah, boom, 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 boom. Just it just hits on so many, and
Right.
then you're like, you hear like, oh my God, you're right. I never realized that. It puts in perspective. Like, yeah,
Well,
that is.
there's a few movies I'm going to mention on this list. You're going to go, wow, that is folk horror.
Mm,
I never realized that. And one of them was one of your favorite fucking movies. I'm going to come right out here and say it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not on my list, but it's folk horror.
It is. Hmm.
It truly
Yep.
is. It is a story being told. It's a cautionary tale.
Hmm.
You know, the you've got the narrator sets it
Hmm.
by having that story. One element that's common in folk horror movies is there's a crazy guy who warns
Hmm.
you of what's going to be happening.
Yep. And
It's
there
in
is.
Children of the Corn. In Children of the Corn, it's the truck. It's the guy at the gas station.
Hmm.
And Cabin
Texas.
Fever, which isn't a folk horror movie, but
In Texas,
it's
it's the guy in
another.
the cemetery. Friday the
Yes.
13th, it's the dude there with the hat on. I forget his name. If Pixie was here, she'd know it off the top of her
Yeah.
head. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so there's always
Yeah.
the old craggy dude who you think is crazy, but he's crazy because nobody believes him that he knows the truth.
And the God Provides. That's Uncle Rory.
Oh, okay. Hmm. God
He's
Provides
that
is a
character.
story that Tom
Well,
wrote. By the way,
yeah.
anybody
Well,
out there?
that's the book.
So,
And the God Provides collection. And the
mhm.
story of Fireflies and Apple Pies. Uncle Rory is that
Is
character. He's
the
that
old guy that
crazy
nobody
old coot.
believes. Hmm.
Yeah. And that character was created by design.
To be that
Um,
representation there.
yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely to be that.
Hmm.
So as far as this is my list of movies. Now we've got the Holy Trinity. You're going to be surprised. Only one movie out of that Holy Trinity is on my best of list.
Mm.
There's lots of notable folk horror movies out there, and a lot of them have come out in the past 5 to 6 years. A24 Studio has been
Fired
pumping
him
them
off.
out
Hmm.
from Ari Aster and Robert Eggers. But Midsummer and Hereditary, they're both folk horror.
Hmm. Yeah.
Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, that's folk horror. It's a cautionary tale of what being isolated and having booze does to you. It makes you want to
Hmm.
have sex with octopus.
X is a folk horror,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Hmm.
yep, absolutely. Books that would be considered folk horror. Probably my favorite would be Pet Cemetery. Pet Cemetery is unique in that manner that that's a book that Stephen King didn't want to put out because it scared him so much, and the subject matter bothered him so much. But that book is folk horror. It's one of the first splatterpunk books. Come
Now,
on, Gates is
you just
death.
said
Kids
a
dying
big
in
buzzword there that some people out there may not be familiar with that because I've talked about the concept of splatterpunk to people and they look at me like, what are you talking about? It's not a
Okay,
musical genre, folks. So describe elevator pitch. What is
splatterpunk and
splatterpunk?
extreme horror.
Hmm.
But at the core, I'm a splatterpunk and extreme horror author. It's
Hmm.
my favorite genre. Um, the difference between splatterpunk and extreme horror is there to break taboos and only to break taboos and to see how far we can go. Splatterpunk is violent, gory, graphic, and it's that way for a reason. It's to make you pay attention and to teach you a fucking lesson,
Hmm.
a moral lesson. You're going to learn something. You're going to be taught something from this. It's going to be punk. There's going to be some social message. There's going to be some ethical message in that story that the writer is trying to convey to you, the reader. And that's what I tried to do.
And
And
that's definitely an aspect of not just like folk horror, but stories in general. There is usually a lesson to be learned, or something to go
Mhm.
along the lines there in that story that you find out about, you didn't know about, you were warned about, and you should hinder that warning and you are faced with something that you don't know if you can beat, you find out how to beat it. So it's
Well, I'm going to
all
tell
those
you
aspects
the
of it.
top three splatterpunk movies. If you don't know what splatterpunk is, or you want to familiarize yourself with splatterpunk on the screen, um, do it with The Crow. Number one, The Crow is fantastic splatterpunk. Every time he kills somebody in that, he tells them why he's killing them. This is a lesson you were learning.
Hmm.
He takes the heroin from the mother, takes it out of her veins. He's teaching her a lesson. The mother is God. Remember that?
Hmm.
Know that
Yep.
line?
Hmm.
Okay. Cocaine Bear, number two.
Still have
You
not seen
laugh.
it. Haven't had time to watch it yet, but I still haven't
You
seen it. But
laugh,
yes.
but Cocaine Bear.
Hmm.
Cocaine Bear is teaching you, about the struggles of a soccer mom in the 80s.
While I'm not laughing at the
It's
subject matter, I still laugh at the freaking title and the concept of the movie.
well, come on,
So
it's
it's
like Snakes on a
hilarious.
Plane. What are you going to do when you're using that as your working title?
Exactly.
There's
It's like
nothing
it's
else works
brilliant.
for it. You know,
Hmm.
the gags and whatnot in Cocaine Bear are literally that. There are the gags, the jokes, the extreme scenes that you're going to find of violence that you're going to find in a splatterpunk or extreme horror book. That movie is littered with them. It is is one of my books on screen. If my book, The Death List, was a movie, it would have the same organic humor and the same craziness that Cocaine Bear has.
Mm.
All right, and
And number three,
no, Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Hmm.
Pulp Fiction is very much a splatterpunk book, splatterpunk movie. It's got an air of supernatural about it. The glow of God that comes out of the suitcase.
Hmm.
We don't know if that's Marcellus Wallace's soul, or if
Yeah.
he's the devil.
Hmm. He's
You
got
know,
because he's got the the bandage in the
yeah,
back of his neck. Is that where it was taken out? That whole narrative
where his
there.
soul was
Yep.
taken from. Right.
Hmm.
And plus the extreme violence, the drug use throughout the book, that movie, it teaches you a lesson. What you do and don't do. One of them is you don't fuck with Marcellus Wallace.
Does Marcellus Wallace look like a bitch?
No, he doesn't.
No, he does not.
So let's get to folk horror movies.
Yeah, let's get to it, man.
Okay. You're gonna see some things are notably missing from this. One of them's Children of the Corn. Number one, that movie's awful. Okay.
Thank you for
It's
saying
just
that.
poorly made.
Thank you so much for
It's
saying
poor,
that. I never
it's
liked that
poorly
movie.
made. Okay. If in the remake of it, it just came out, the reboot, they screwed the pooch again on it. This story is told perfectly. That story is perfect. It's, you don't know what happened in the village. That's what makes it so goddamn scary.
Mhm.
By having that opening sequence where the kids go on the killing spree, it totally ruins that movie. It's bad writing. It's
Mhm.
just horrible writing. You want to heap a mystery box. You want your opening to be cold. You want it to be a reflection of the end.
Mhm.
That way your readers will be satisfied with the closing of the book. So or the movie, as the case is.
In this case.
Malignant's a great example where they foreshadowed it perfectly. And when you found out that the person had a twin inside of them, you go, oh God, they were telling us that in the beginning. Bingo!
Mhm.
There you go. All right. Children of the Corn just tips its hat immediately and just spills everything out, and that's it.
Mhm.
And because of that, there's no sense of urgency in it, because you know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
Make it a mystery, so they don't know what's going to happen. So that's why Children of the Corn's not on this list. Rawhead Rex is just an awful movie. As fun as it is to watch, it's an awful movie. But the story by Clive Barker is one of the greatest folk horror stories of all kind. Come on. An 8-foot-tall giant penis going around killing people in the countryside in Ireland and England. How can you go wrong with that?
Well,
No, you turn it into what doesn't look like a penis on a movie screen. That's how you ruin it.
it's a dick move. So
It was a dick move, yes. Yes. But perhaps the greatest folk horror short story of all time, especially for North American, the North American subgenre, which I am part of, would be Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
The Lottery, yes, classic.
Yes. And I do my version of that story in the tale that's attached to Bella's Boys, which features a werewolf Viking versus a zombie giant squid. Take my money. That's got my version of the lottery in it. My take on it. My homage to Shirley's story. It involves a werewolf.
Ah.
So check that
And
out.
it's that story also, not to cut you off, but that story also really works on the twist ending, to where you
Yes.
think, oh, it's for this wonderful thing, and it turns out no. The reason why this is like this is because that happens, and when that happens, that's when you like, what?
It's one of the ingredients of folk horror. It's the sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
You sacrifice for you do the rain dance, so the gods smile upon you.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the versions of a folk horror story. Another great one is in music. We talked about Number of the Beast, but The Legend of Woolly Swamp from the Charlie Daniels Band. That is one of the best folk horror songs of all time. Mm-hmm. And I will sing that to the day I die. I don't care how bad a person Charlie became before he passed. I still love that song, and I know it by heart. I sang it at NoCoCon a couple weeks ago. Everybody's like, "What?" Yeah, I put the Southern in it too. All right, the movies. Okay, I lied. Rawhead Rex is number 10.
Oh, all right, that's fine.
It is. It's number 10. It's number 10 for a reason, because it's such a fun film. Again, these aren't the best folk horror movies. These are my favorite.
I want your favorite. We don't have to do the best of all time, because it's so hard.
We know what the best are. We know Midsummer's going to be the best on everybody's fucking list, and number 2 is going to be Wicker Man. Every list. Why? Because that's what journalists do. They emulate each other, and maybe somebody will jazz it up a little bit. Put something else up in the top 5. But these are my favorite movies. These are the movies that give me joy and release dopamine in my body.
There we go.
All right.
That's what we want.
And they influence me. Number 10, Rawhead Rex.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, Tooth Fairies are scary, okay? Tooth Fairies are the scariest goddamn things out there. And remember what I said to you earlier about the Fae? They ain't
fairy, yes.
things with wings. No, they hide underneath the freaking stairs in your basement, and they cut the backs of your freaking ankles so you fall down the stairs. And don't be afraid of the dark.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go down the stairs in my parents' house for years because of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and the Guillermo del Toro remake...
Yeah.
It's pretty. It's pretty to look at.
Yeah.
It's got Elizabeth Olsen in it. That's good.
That's nice.
But it's not. It didn't give me that fear that 1973 or 74 black and white televised movie did.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who aren't Gen X wasn't just our parents telling us to go out and come back at light, at dark, okay?
Yeah, at nighttime.
It was, you had 3 or 4 channels. There was no cable when you were young. You had 3 or 4 channels, and you watched what mom and dad watched that night. And this was back when the major networks put scary goddamn movies on TV.
Rosemary's Baby.
No, that was a theatrical film, but that was on TV, and that was on the same night as the Paul Lynde holiday special.
Which was like Kiss.
So all us kids had stayed up at 8 o'clock to watch Paul Lynde and see Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking
I've
of
heard
Walt.
the story before. That's why I'm bringing it up. I love it.
And then after that, they played Rosemary's Baby movie. I'm terrified of people with bushy eyebrows now because of that film. Because I saw it when I was 9 years old.
That Brezhnev is dead.
Gosh, oh yeah.
Helter Skelter.
Everything I saw him on the news, I had flashbacks. Yeah.
All right, next up.
Okay. Don't be afraid of the dark. Rawhead Rex. The Dark Secret of Harvest Home. One of Betty Davis's last movies. I remember watching this on TV with my mom, and my mom being all weirded out, and me going, "Geek. I guess I don't like corn anymore." But the movie really influenced the God in the Well story in the God Provides book. The second, the one that follows Fireflies and Apple Pies. It really influenced that, and I wanted it. That's why I have the ending that I have for that, because I wanted it to be a positive ending. A lot of these folk horror stories, the person from Civilization gets the shit end of the stick. We'll call it that.
Mm-hmm.
They're the sacrifice or whatever. And I lead this story up to make you think he's going to be that sacrifice, and then you realize they're just accepting him into their community because he did the right thing. He didn't screw around with their daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so being the nice guy paid off for our protagonist in that story. Being the nice guy does not pay off for the husband in Harvest Home, however.
Yeah.
You know, he gets to stay with his wife, but he's just blind now. Yeah. Anything to make the corn grow. And Betty Davis is just creepy. She's creepier than Malachi ever could have been in Children of the Corn. All right. Number 7. Number 7 is a big one. Number 7 features Lance Henriksen.
Ooh.
Number 7 features kids from Civilization. Again, people from Civilization, the other, coming in and screwing around with the rural life. Their other. And as a result, you know, Lance Henriksen has to get the Pumpkinhead after them. Yeah, Pumpkinhead is one of the best folk horror movies out there. The monster design in it is one of Stan Winston's best.
It definitely stands out so well.
It truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, I couldn't get through this list without bringing up Robert Egger. As much as I wanted to put the Northman on here, it's not folk horror, it's fucking Shakespeare. But The Witch, or The Vitch.
Yep, The Vitch, yep.
Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah. So I'm going to say, folk horror at its best, Black Phillip, the goat.
The goat, yep.
My Lord.
People need to like get over the language used in the movie. I mean, the dialogue and the vernacular they used. I enjoyed it too, but so many people will like complain, like, "Oh, I don't understand what they're saying." That's not the point. Don't worry about what they're saying. Look at what's happening. Okay, it's a movie. It's not something you need to worry about what is being said. It's like a Shakespeare's play. Yeah, with a Greek play. Because sometimes in a Greek play, the dialogue is not necessarily having anything to do with what is going on around it. So you just have to focus on what you see and just let the story tell itself. Don't worry about the language they're trying to use, the Old English and the amalgam of Dutch, German, English, and all that stuff. Don't worry about that. Just watch the movie. It's good.
It is. It's a fantastic film. And the guy that plays the father is he plays Lorath in Diablo 4.
Yep. And that's a young what's her name, who plays the daughter. She was in the Queen's Gambit.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yep. So
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yep. She was in the Queen's Gambit. She was tons of stuff.
She is genre films queen right now. If she is the next coming of Natalie Portman.
Yes. Yep.
If Natalie Portman is becoming she's becoming a crone figure as she gets older. Anya Taylor-Joy is the maiden figure now, using pagan terminology here for maiden, mother, and
maiden
crone.
Crone. Yep.
Yeah, and because Natalie's been doing a great job as the mother lately, and in some of her films. My God, she's wonderful, and I'm glad too that she's come out and spoken against some of what Luc Besson did in Leon the Professional. Because that movie, as much as I loved it when it came out, it makes me uncomfortable to watch it today.
I don't watch it.
Don't watch it. When you realize and you think about all the movies that Luc Besson has put out since that film, and you realize that he's just been fetishizing women the entire time.
Yeah, it's gross.
We have Pornhub for that, okay? And I'll go to that whenever I want it. I don't want to see it in my entertainment.
No.
Yeah, not at all. All right. Number 4. Number 5. We're in the top 5. We're in the top 5. Yes. It's not the Nicolas Cage version. It's the Christopher Lee version.
The Wicker Man. Yes.
The Wicker Man. Oh, yes. Edward Woodward, I'm sorry you got burnt up, but hey, it had to happen to somebody.
Right.
Yeah. And they got their reign. I haven't seen The Wicker Tree yet, which is supposed to be the spiritual sequel to that. Also done by the same person who did Wicker Man. So I'm looking forward to watching that, as I've been trying to watch some films that I either haven't seen in a long time or never saw, to see what I'm missing. Like, I had never seen The Blood on Satan's Claw. I've seen Witchfinder General a few times, and I've seen Wicker Man a few times, but I've never seen The Blood on Satan's Claw until recently. And it's a good movie. It's a fantastic film. All right. Number 4. Evil Dead. Isolated, rural.
Yep.
People are trapped in a cabin. People from the city are trapped in the cabin. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely folklore.
It's folklore. Very influential on me as a writer. Especially since the Witch of November, which is going to be the sequel to The God Provides,
Oh, yes.
is basically me expanding and retelling Fireflies and Apple Pies as a novel.
It's a one. Oh, okay. It's a novel.
It's going to be one novel, but it's also like Evil Dead 2 is a remake of Evil Dead and a sequel.
Yeah, at the same time.
This is going to be a sequel and a remake. It's going. Everything that happened in the first book happened. This is just me telling the story
Just
a different way.
Different way of telling it.
Yep, with different characters. And given the same message. Family first and blah blah blah. So yeah, although The Evil Dead, such an influential film for 40 years. Evil Dead Rise, which I saw recently, brings it into the city finally.
Loved it.
And it's something to be said about when folk horror goes to the city, because that actually influences my number one pick when we get to it. Because it's one thing when the other goes into the woods, but when the woods goes into the city, yeah. You saw what ended up happening because of that in Evil Dead Rise. You ended up getting the amalgamation creature.
Yes. Yep.
Which is a reflection of the city.
Just everything coming
in the
together
city
is this big, massive nothing.
And some people
that is
didn't
just
like
there to
that.
kill you. That has no other drive than to kill you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
And the other thing too with the Evil Dead series that I appreciate is the fact it's supernatural, and you can't defeat it. Because that's what supernatural is. It's unbeatable.
Well, it ended up kind of being defeated because they used a bit of what is used to keep nature at bay to escape, and that is the wood chipper.
But
the wood chipper being used was important because
the first scene happens after.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes,
it continues on.
Oh, absolutely, it does. But the wood chipper is significant in that it is a device that is used to destroy the wild. You put trees into it, wood into it, to dispose of it.
Gee, kind of like a chainsaw.
Yes. Oh my gosh!
Wow.
You see the correlations?
You see the connections there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm waiting for one movie to come up on this list I have in my head that we've talked about several times. Waiting to see if it shows up.
Well, we'll find out. I'm not sure if it will or not.
We'll go.
Number 3 for me, The Ritual.
That was it. That was it.
The Ritual?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The film adaptation of Adam Neville's wonderful book. It takes out part of one of the plot lines of the novel, but the movie didn't need it. And by removing it, it didn't need it. But the creature, the god that's in it is just so hands down.
It's fucking metal is what it is.
It's metal as hell.
We talked about that. It's black metal, it's folk metal, it's Celtic metal, it's got all that influence in there.
It does, and the book itself too, it's got the black metal characters in it too. So but yeah, The Ritual from Adam Neville, what a fantastic film. It's on Netflix. I have to find it in the store because I won't buy Netflix now.
Yeah, we dumped Netflix a while ago and not going back. Support the writers. Support the writer strike.
Writers Guild of America.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there I go. All right, number 2. Probably the most important American folk horror film ever made. It revitalized and some say even created a genre out of its own. And that is the Blair Witch Project. The folklore around that and the folklore they created that started the internet sensation that was its advertising campaign. That's what sucked me in.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, and this is days before social media. This is in the days before MySpace or anything like that. And this is the days when you had Angel Fire pages if you wanted to have your own social media page.
Wow.
And I had an Angel
GeoCities,
Fire page.
GeoCities,
I
Angel
did.
Fire.
I had a net.
Yep.
I had a Netscape page actually. It was a Netscape page.
Wow.
Yep. And I used to put early drafts of my first four of many of my early short stories are in that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Wayback Machine, you might be able to find them in their original poorly edited versions.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I got to turn around for a second. I don't want to piss
gotta-
off the.
He's got to do something real
cent-
quick. Yeah, and definitely Blair Witch Project was one of those. It was marketed so well that it was made for a couple $100,000 maybe and grossed millions. That's why we got sequels and remakes. Let me just say right now, found footage is not my thing. I freaking hate found footage movies. I don't even like Blair Witch Project as a movie in and of itself. But I know it has helped define a generation when it comes to getting people into horror. So,
well, the weekend that I met Walt, was the same weekend that I interviewed the cast of the Blair Witch Project and gave them their first interview in 15 years. And that was a cathartic weekend for me because it got me into the Horror Writers Association. Walt and I we started talking about podcasting together, and look what came out of it.
And look what came out of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This. All right, number one. What do you think my number one is? What country made number one, do you think? Where does it come out? What country does it come out of?
Is it a country or continent?
Oh. It was made by an American filmmaker, but doesn't take place in America. But the protagonist, or is he the antagonist, is American. And he's in London. Yeah. A naked American man stole my balloons, Mommy.
American Werewolf in London.
When I am driving down the road and I see any fog, the first words that come out of my mouth are, "Don't go out in the moors, lad." Yeah, I know it's not the exact quote, but
close enough.
State of the roads, stay off the moors, lad.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, An American Werewolf in London.
Mm-hmm.
That film is, I know I said Cocaine Bear is one of my books on screen. An American Werewolf in London is perhaps the most influential horror movie on me of all time. I've realized this after watching it a few times recently. I've actually watched it a few times recently.
Mm-hmm.
It is the personification of a splatterfolk book that I write on the screen. The violence is there.
Mm-hmm.
The nightmares are there. The representation of what these monsters are metaphorically representing is there.
Mm-hmm.
People go, why are there Nazis in the American Werewolf in London showing up? Why are these Nazis showing up? Because the werewolf is a metaphor for the Nazi. One of the things that I did in The God Provides and Fireflies and Apple Pies especially is I made them progressive as opposed to conservative.
Mm-hmm.
They're not Nazis. Not my werewolves. Not ever. I had to do everything in my power to do and characterize them. Not be that.
Mm-hmm. The opposite of what
the Wolfman movie. Mm-hmm. The Wolfman movie, the original, well, quote unquote, the second werewolf movie.
Yeah. I mean,
the first one's the Werewolf of London which is not, and that's real. It's not.
Makeup's horrible and
yeah.
Not Lon Chaney Jr. Let's just say that.
Yeah, so. The Lon Chaney Jr. film establishes a lot of things, and it was written by a Jew, Clifford Sidemak. Sidemak, sorry. And when the first draft of that script, the Gypsy Pentacle, was actually a Star of David.
Star David.
Starred David, and they weren't gypsies; they were Jews. But because of anti-Semitism, and that was rampant in Hollywood then,
Oh yeah.
they cautiously changed it to gypsies, many of which were Hebrew or Jewish in reality. And they changed it to a pentacle, which would be, more acceptable for society then.
Scary but not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason that a movie that takes place during World War II has absolutely no Germans or no Nazis in it, you know why? Well, there is one in there. It's the American nationalist, played by Lon Chaney Jr. Yeah, I hate to say it, though. The Wolfman movie from Universal Monsters is a very political film. And it represents the werewolf as what he was, which was a Nazi. And again, it's our duty as modern horror writers, if we're going to use the werewolf as the villain, to represent him properly and as such. This is why other films that have werewolves and whatnot, and it may not be so successful, because they forgot what it's about, and they forgot how to take it and turn that trope on its head, like I did. Who knows? I know. Stephen Graham Jones, his book Mongrels, didn't forget that. He knows. He had the Lone Ranger in that. Spoiler alert: the Lone Ranger is a werewolf hunter in that book. Yeah, but he's also a werewolf. He's also a fascist. There you go.
Yeah,
But American Werewolf.
When you really look back into the true, the times, the context of when these stories were conceptualized, written, and put out there, you don't don't worry about what you see on screen, because what you see is only 50% of the story. So what's happening behind the scenes with those stories, the influences behind them, are way more deeper than you can imagine.
And that's one of the things about An American Werewolf in London, is it has both dichotomies in it. It has the person coming from the civilization into the wild, and then he brings that wild into the city.
Yep.
Now, is he really a werewolf in that film? Because when you're watching it, when you're watching the movie, at the very end of it, while she's walking up to him, she doesn't see a werewolf. She sees David.
She sees him. Is he actually doing it, or is it all in his head?
All in his head. And that's another reason that film is so good. It leaves you with that question. Wait, why is she? Wait, does she? You go, huh? No. Maybe.
And it's up for your interpretation. That's the other thing I don't like about certain movies, is that they just ram it down your throat about what it is.
Yeah.
And then you need a story, like you were talking about before. It starts cold, and it should end, end that same way. So you don't need to have everything explained to you.
The cold open needs to reflect the ending. It needs to foreshadow it. Every James Bond movie has a cold open, and that cold open is of him finishing his last job. That last job and what he's doing there.
New mission
gives you a clue to what's going to happen at the end of the film to him. So you can buy when he escapes from the bad guy at the end and gets out of that life or death predicament that Bond always gets out of, because he's a superhero. Okay. Little secret, guys, there is no such thing as superhero fatigue. If there was, we wouldn't be watching any movies. James Bond's a fucking superhero. Sorry. Always has been. He's been around for 60 years. Anyway, let's go on. Let's continue on. Okay? Superhero fatigue. Manufactured fucking terms. You know why? There's so many superhero movies now. Now we're starting to be able to differentiate between what's good and not good. Before, we only had this one package of horror of superhero movies, and they were all stellar. We consider them also. You know why? Because we lived through the dark times where we got bad movies for years based off of those properties. So these, of course, were considered gold. Well, now there's so many of them. We got something to measure that bar by, and that is fucking Avengers Endgame. Okay. So you have Past that, you have movies that are as good as Endgame or
Or
worse than
not.
Endgame.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they're becoming obvious, and we're starting to also get cult films out of this, like Morbius, which is clearly a bad movie,
Hmm.
but hey, it's Morbin time. It's,
Right. Yeah.
and then the studio mistakes that for being popular and re-releases the movie. I don't get it.
While we were talking about the stuff there, I decided to pull up a quick list here from MovieWeb.com. I wanted to see what they consider to be the best folk horror movies. And there are quite a few crossovers here. I just want to run them off real quick.
Okay.
And number 9 for them, The Ritual.
Okay.
Number 8, The Blood on Satan's Claw, which you talked about
Claw,
earlier. Claw, excuse me. Number 7, The Kill List from 2011.
Yes, I have not seen that.
Yep. Number 6, Witchfinder General, 1968. Vincent Price, as we talked about. Number 5, Blair Witch Project. Number 4, A Field in England.
That's a relatively new movie that I have
2013.
not seen yet, and I want to. Yeah, it's 10 years old. To me, I'm 56 years old, so that's relatively new.
Yeah, yeah.
It's post millennial,
Yep,
so
so
I
it's
haven't seen
it's,
it
it's
yet,
the
and I
most
want to.
experimental movie on the list. It's like Witchfinder General. They're saying it's set in the English Civil War and so forth. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so it has that stuff. Number 3 was The Wicker Man. Number 2, Midsummer. And number 1, The Vivitch, The Witch.
The
So,
Witch, yeah.
yep. Yeah, I still say
Again,
Vivitch because it's 2 V's.
you're going to see a lot of films that it's either Midsummer or The Witch that are going to be number one.
Yeah, the top list.
And then again, that's everybody. I don't want to say something inappropriate.
So, yeah. So,
But
there you go.
yeah, it's just people being people.
Mhm.
It is what it is.
But yeah, that's
Um,
fine. And all this is subjective too, as far as what you like,
Yeah.
what you don't like. What your favorite movie is not everyone else's. What my favorite movie is not everyone else's, and
Right.
so forth. So it's just all subjective.
Now, there's two things we haven't talked about: folk horror on TV,
TV and music.
and there's well, we've touched on the music some with Number of the Beast and Legend of Woolly Swamp, but there's actually a band out there right now that Walt didn't introduce me to. Okay. So Christmas 2021, I go down to Soundgarden, and I'm gonna buy some new vinyl. And I see this album there with a stained glass front on it. I'm like, ooh, this looks cool. They're not Barky, because I don't like Barky singers.
Mhm.
So I go to YouTube. I go to my phone. I go to text Walt, and I'm like, oh, no. I'm not going to bother Walt with this. Let me, because I've done that before. Well, should I buy this?
Uh-huh.
Is it going to be something I like? And he'll tell me, honestly, if it's yes or no, because he's probably already listened to it on his Spotify.
More likely, yeah.
So I went to YouTube. I brought the album up. I started listening. I said, holy shit, this is Black Sabbath meets Uriah Heep. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Close my phone, buy the record, come home. And I played that nonstop through the month of December into January. It became my number one album of the year that year, if you recall.
I don't remember what I have.
And it had only just came
Don't
out.
even ask.
Green Lung's Black Harvest
The
album.
Green Lung. Yep. Okay.
Green Lung is a band from London. They're led by Tom Templer and Sean Black. He plays a beautiful Gibson SG. They've usurped Ghost as my favorite band. Last year, I ended up being in their top 100 fans on Apple Music. My goal this year is to be their number one fan, minus the Annie Wilkes. Yeah. All I listen to when I'm driving rideshare is Green Lung. So anybody that gets in and out of my car during the day
They have to
gets
listen to Green
exposed
Lung.
to Green Lung. All right. Green Lung sings about folk horror. That's all they sing about. And they use a lot of metaphor in there. Tom Templer's a brilliant lyricist. And Their first two albums, Woodland Rights and first two full length albums, Woodland Rights and Black Harvest. They're like Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. You play them together and they just meld together. It's like one giant double album. And it totally influenced Summer Home, my book Summer Home. It's totally influenced everything I've written since. I love Ghost. Don't get me wrong. They're number 2 band now.
Mm-hmm. But now you're listening to a metal band.
You know, Scott, you know you're number 1.
I love
right?
that. Yes, thank you very much. I know I'm number 1, sir. we ride Tommy all the time about his Ghost fandom because they're not a metal band.
Now
But they
your
were,
friends in
but they're not
England,
anymore. But yes.
If any of your friends in England that are watching this live stream right now,
So Tracy, Tony, Harry, all y'all out there.
yeah, can help facilitate getting me some Green Lung merch from a show over there. It's gonna be some time before they come to the States. You know,
For reasons.
traveling sucks nowadays.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk. I'll make it worth your while. All right.
All right, so
Okay.
any of you
And I
watching
wear
this
a
in
4X
VOD,
shirt.
comment down there. If you're watching this VOD, all my friends in England, comment down there where we can get some Green Lung merch for this guy, okay? Hook him up.
I've got one shirt so far.
He needs
Got
more.
one shirt from the American.
He wears a
Merch shirt.
medium.
No, I do not. 3 to 4X, but
3 to 4X,
Okay.
I know. I was being
Okay.
nice.
Now, I have
TV.
found a love. You know, the past couple of years, I've been a Disney Plus Marvel guy, watching most of those for my scripted television. Last year, Epics, the home of Chapel Waite and stuff like that, which is also a good show, started putting out a TV show called From.
Oh, yeah, I've seen you post about that.
From has folklore elements all throughout it. It's Lost, the horror version. It even features people that were on Lost, and it's created by a former Lost writer and directed by a former Lost unit
Is there a
director.
connection here?
We've seen, Harold Perrineau's in it. He's the lead actor. This would be, if they had owned, I love From. It's so good it's bad, though.
Oh,
Does that make sense to you?
It's one of those
It's so
good
good
things,
it's
yeah.
bad.
Mhm.
It's well written. Their mystery box is fucking brilliant. It's up there. It's up there with J.J. Abrams' mystery box. But you know no idea what's going on. We got a little secret. We do know if you're right. If you know folklore, you know what's going on with it. They're in the spoiler alert. They're under the mound. There's Faye involved. Anyway, so if you know how Lost, anything that happened on an episode of that, there was a background about the characters that would be involved. You would learn some of their history before they got to the island. And they have done that a little bit, like a pinky fingernail bit with this show with only 2 characters. Have they shown any backstory? If they had done that with every episode, 2 things would have happened. One, you would have cared about the people getting killed by the nightmare creatures. And number 2, you would have created yourself the best fucking horror television program ever made. They're course correcting in season 2. They're starting to show more backstories of how people got to the town. But if you see a meme of somebody saying, if you know, you know, and a log across the road, or a tree falling across the road, and they're like, oh no, I'm not going to go. If you know, you know. That's a From meme.
That's from. Okay.
That's from. Okay. They haven't given any answers to anything that's going on through almost 20 episodes over 2 seasons.
Good. I like that.
And a lot of people are getting frustrated with that because they want answers right away because other shows have given answers right away. I like the fact that they're not, and I like the fact that it comes out once a week. So we have a week to stew and
So it's not a big data drop.
postulate.
You can sit back and you know,
You can
just
sit
take
back
the
and
whole
try to
thing in.
wonder what happened or what's going on and research on the internet like I'm trying to do all the time. Just like you did with Lost.
Mhm.
I like the binge format somewhat. Just some shows I'll
Depends on the
binge.
type of show it is, yeah. So,
Yeah. But
mhm.
shows like From and shows like Lost, shows that are serialized that give you a cliffhanger or something to water cooler talk about or social media vent about the next day, and do that for 6 or 7 days leading to the next episode.
That
They
means you
did it
got
with
them.
Last of Us.
Yeah, that means
You
you
got
got
them.
them. So
You got
that's
them.
what you need
You
because
got
there's
them. And
you don't hear
and
about that
it
much anymore. The biggest show that's been on TV that was getting that kind of stuff, at least
was Last of Us.
on the cable networks, was Yellowstone, and all
Oh,
the
yeah, that's not so much serialized, is it?
it is it's a
Or
weekly
was
thing.
it?
Yeah, it is a weekly thing. So for
By
that
with
one,
serialized, I mean it's one ongoing story.
oh yeah, it is one ongoing story.
Okay,
Yep,
it is okay because I'm not
yep,
familiar with Yellowstone because I haven't watched it.
that's fine.
Because quite honestly, I like my westerns in space or after the end of the world, as opposed to having them once again telling me another western.
Hmm.
But
And
that's me. That's me.
it's
It's
modern
no,
day.
I'm not.
It's it has reflections of society in that respect too in modern days, but also with the side shows that they've done like 1883, 1923, and all the other projects they have in line. That's the only other thing that's really been like a big water cooler discussion type show that's been getting a lot of attention out there. So with a show like From having the folk horror aspect to it, it's
Right.
bringing that back into the conversation, which there has not been probably since after The Walking Dead and started to have its decline. You had Last of Us, and that was getting a lot of that water cooler talk like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then the From is starting to do
House of
that
the
too. So,
Dragon. House of
yep,
the Dragon was getting
that
some,
was getting
and so
some.
was Boring of the Borings of Power. I mean, the Rings of Power.
Oh yes, I know you wanted that to be so good, and you
And I
just
wanted Willow to be good too. And Willow started out with promise and just what the heck?
flop.
You spend all your money on Boba Fett's armor?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it, Disney. Where are they wearing Levi's? They were wearing freaking Levi's or Wranglers. One of the two. They had concert T-shirts on. And Willow. I'm not making this up, Scott. What did you do to my Willow? Well, not that Willow was the greatest movie to begin with.
But still, it was a good movie. It's like you had high hopes for it. So that's fine.
Gosh, I had hopes for something too. I didn't get it. But definitely is a great water cooler show. My wife and I love it. We enjoy watching it together, and we actually binged 3 episodes in a row the other day. And something happened, and it made us want to watch another episode that you're watching too. And we're like, "Oh my god, it's got us hooked." I want to write something like that, where there's this mystery box throughout the book of people being trapped someplace or secluded someplace, and you don't know where they are. I want to try to explore that kind of theme sometime. I think I don't know what kind of story I would do to tell it. I would try not to make it like Lost or like From in that manner because I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to. You're on an island. There's a set of numbers.
Yep.
It's an escape room. Maybe that's what this is. Who knows? Some people have theorized that they're in a fairyland.
But that's the cool thing about folk horror in and of itself. It is a kernel that grows into so much influence and creates so much. The imaginations go wild with authors like yourself and plenty of other people you talked about. To keep that going on, to create those narratives that go on and on and on, and focus again on the core ideals of those stories, and just window dressing it differently to accommodate different generations. So, what did we learn from this episode today? We learned you want to listen to Green Lung, and any friends in England, you can hook this guy up with some merchandise. He'll gladly take care of you. Check out From. It's out there on for you to check out on serialized, like you said. You got 10 incredible folk horror movies that you can check out at your convenience that this man recommends. And also, we got to learn is Thomas R. Clarke is constantly putting out Great works. I have several of his works myself. I've had the chance to beta read some stories for him. I always enjoy his stuff. So where do people find your stuff, Mr. Clark?
ThomasRClark.com. That's easy.
Mm-hmm.
No E on the end of the Clark. Sometime between the time my great grandfather got on the boat in Ireland and got off and over in New York City, he lost the E. I think it jumped off the ship.
Probably, yeah.
Also, I'm on Amazon. I'm on Barnes and Noble. You can get me at all those outlets. Upstate New York, locally, you can get me at local Barnes and Noble stores.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Soundgarden, downtown Syracuse. You can get my books there. I'm also in Earthbound Metaphysical over in North Syracuse. My new book's called A Prayer from the Dead through St. Rooster Books. It's the Boondock Saints meets The Crow meets The Handmaid's Tale in a cyberpunk setting.
Mm-hmm.
So check it out.
And if there's a convention going on in New York State, you're going to see this guy.
Okay. So let's talk about where I'm going to be.
Let's go.
The remainder of the year here. Okay, let me bring up. I got it written down. July 8th, I'm going to be. That's my next appearance.
My birthday.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'm going. I am going to be in Hastings, New York, and I'm going to be at a little craft show that they have going on there. What's the name of the place? My friend told me what it was. It's Lasnicki's Landscaping. They have this big giant craft show up in Hastings, New York every year. So I'm going to be there on July 8th. And then I'm going to be, where is my list of appearances? My wife and appearances. Okay. July 20th through 23rd, I'm going to be at Nikon in Lowell, Massachusetts. That's a Northeast Horror Writers Conference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be there as a guest or anything. I'm just going to be there as somebody attending. So I will have copies of my books if you're a writer and are going, or a non-writer and are going. I will have copies of my books to sell on Saturday night. August 12th, I'll be at Freya Fest in Remsen, New York, with the Wandering Wordsmiths. August 19th and 20th, I'll be a featured guest up at AnchorCon in Clayton, New York. It's a giant pop culture festival that's up on Lake Ontario. September 9th and the 10th, I'm going to be at the Beaver Lake Harvest Festival. Mm-hmm. September 16th, I'm going to be at Pagan Pride Day, a featured guest there. Funny that I'm selling folk horror books at Pagan Pride Day.
Really? Wow, that's branding right there.
Yes. And October 28th, I was originally supposed to be at the Baldwinsville Library. However, our good friend Walt has a thing that he does down in Oneonta, and I'm going to go down there and participate in that this year.
Okay. Cool.
He doesn't know that yet. I'm making that announcement here right now.
There you go.
So October 28th, I'm going to be at the Worcester Weird Festival, and I'm hopefully going to be able to get a couple other horror authors to join me.
That'll be cool.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Say no more.
You hear me, Tim? You're coming with me.
Tim.
Yeah, that's right.
To you, man.
Coming with me that day, buddy.
So there you have it. That is Thomas R. Clark, my buddy Tom, a guy that I'm so grateful to have in my life and a guy I learned a lot from, and I wanted to have him on here.
Scott.
I love
really
you too,
do,
brother.
man.
I thank you so much for everything we've gotten to do together and the influence you've had on me. Something else that we got to work on together that might be out soon. Wink, wink. And
yeah, coming out in July.
Kayfabe.
There might be something coming out.
Coming out. So we'll see about that. But I'm glad I could have you on here, brother. It's great talking to you. I want to have plenty of other friends on here and plenty of other friends I've made out there. Thanks to this platform that I'm so grateful to be a part of. Thank you all out there for hanging out with us today. This is going to be up on the channel, so you can watch it anytime you want and share it out there on social media if you don't mind. Information about me is all down in the description. My TikTok, my Instagram, my Twitter, my Twitch account, my Twitch account, where I play music every single week, and my TeePublic merch store. Shout out to my boy Walter, who got one of my t-shirts lately, so thank you all for doing that. And everyone out there that supports and donates and all that stuff. So, Neri, JJ, Bobby, Tracy, all you great folks in the chat, thank you for hanging out today. Me, Metal Mike as well. I'll be back on here. I won't be back here Friday night because we're doing Shadow Cult Podcast Friday night instead of Saturday because our boy Levi is going to a wrestling show Saturday night. But this Friday night on Thrash Maniac 99's YouTube channel for the Shadow Cult Podcast, top 10 worst gimmick matches of all time. That's going to be a fun discussion.
Make sure Levi knows about Green Lung.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure
I gotta
he'd
do
love
that.
them.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. Yep. I'll have to get him and his boys into listen to that stuff, too. So, and I'll be on Twitch on Wednesday night for the usual jam out on there. And who knows when else I'm going to pop up on here. You never know. So hit the notification bell so you find out. Thank you, my friends, for stopping by. Keep those horns high. And